said we were. And then we discussed the definition of a dwelling unit and the winter condition aspect of that. And he said that it was a very good point, and he understood where we were coming from. And so I'm a little bit surprised with the conversation right now.
Understood. David?
Well, I mean, they are dwelling units. Mean temperature is below 60. That's, around here, it's around November, maybe late October to say May. And that's normal. You shut the water off, but these are habitable units. If you want me to declare them uninhabitable, I would stop the process for demolition. That's the only reason why I would make them uninhabitable. So you don't want to go down that road. Like I said, the only way this is, we did discuss many options. I did discuss it with your consultant. There's options, but it does have to go through this board. It cannot be done by right because of the existing nonconformity. So this board has to you need to send a proposal, whether you're looking for a variance, written finding, or a special permit.
So just for clarity, right now, these 3 additional buildings don't have heat, they're connected to sewer, they have a kitchen, they have sleeping area,
Yes,
and they have a bathroom.
yes.
They don't have
Summer.
heat, and so, very important, never ever have you taken a penny for the rental of any one of those 3. I'm not
Zero.
putting words in your mouth, I'm just asking a question.
0.
But people have stayed in them, whether they be relatives, friends, or whatever. You just
Correct.
have not been paid for that.
Correct, our friends and family come.
Right. So I think the question basically asked is, does a rental require someone to pay for that rental, or can families stay in that and it not be considered a rental, number one? And number two is the habitability. It would seem to me if it's habitable for your someone to stay in it, meaning your family to stay in it, it's habitable. I mean, it's sleepable, and I get the fact it has
Not
no
for
heat.
80-year-old people for year-round.
Yeah, but so you're not gonna, I mean, I would think in the middle of January, February, you may plug in an air conditioner or something, but, I mean, not January, July, August, September, you could stay in them, right? You don't need heat.
No, that's the point.
They live
Yeah,
there
exactly.
year-round. They
The
live there
point is,
year-round.
you don't live there year-round. They're not for year-round, but that doesn't make
Even
them.
saying, I get his drift, and
It
that is,
doesn't-
there's 3 buildings that are sitting there that can be used for people to sleep in them and to enjoy their life in them, not in the middle of the winter, but in, say, June, July, August, September, October. They could stay and they could habitate those units.
Right, but how do you square that with the accessory apartment bylaw that is as of right if you meet the criteria?
Well, you probably, my attitude is one of those 3, okay, is your accessory.
They're in the
Because
flood
she's
zone.
using it right now.
But not as an accessory apartment,
This is one of those,
Yeah.
so.
I get it.
Because, I mean, again, the spirit and intent of the accessory apartment is what we're intending it to use it for, which is to allow Mrs. Spencer's parents to live there year-round. They can't do that in these other outstructures. They just can't.
It would seem to me, and I'm just recommending this, I'm one person on this board. David's saying, come to this board for a special permit for one unit, correct, David, 1 unit?
No, we'd have to come for.
No, they have to come they have to
You'd have
take
to-
a different
Well, with a
approach.
plan would really involve 3 then, I guess. One of them would be the apartment, and the other 2 would be rental units, I guess, or whatever you want to call them.
Well, three.
Yeah, so-
They have to take a different approach. And
Yeah.
what the approach that is, we don't know yet.
Trying to understand an approach that would work for you, this board, and the building inspector.
What
zoning
Dave is suggesting, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, if the Spencers want, assuming the board doesn't agree with my argument,
Understood.
so they support Dave's decision. What Dave is saying is that you have pre-existing non-conforming structures, because these structures have been there since before the zoning bylaw. So the bylaw allows you to extend or alter a pre-existing non-conforming use. Under 174.7, I think actually you can do it as a written finding, okay? So we wouldn't have to remove anything that's on site, and we would ask this board to allow us to extend the pre-existing non-conforming multiple structures by allowing the accessory dwelling unit.
Which would then be 4, technically, correct?
You would have 4 out structures.
Right. But why wouldn't you take one of the 3?
Yeah.
Well, because it's not attached to the building.
Right, it's not attached to the
And
building.
they're in
There
the
you go.
flood.
And then the flood zone, it just creates a whole new can of
But
worms.
see, one of the things I did is I asked Joe Kalen, or I asked someone within the department, has there ever been a rental inspection? There never has been.
Right, they don't rent them.
So I'm happy to hear that you haven't rented it, because you would have been doing it illegally.
Right.
I get it. But still, there's a fine line between, friends, family, whatever, right? And I understand not taking money, I get it, I understand probably the definition of a rental, you probably have to take some type of compensation.
Absolutely.
Compensation is, I don't know.
There's no rental
I
agreements,
get
there's
it.
no
I-
landlord-tenant relationship.
I get
so
it,
it's
I
not-
understand, I get you. But it would seem to me we're just trying to clear something up here, right? There's more to this than as simple as, just look aside and not deal with those 3.
Well, they're asking for something that has nothing to do with the 3 outlying buildings,
Right,
correct?
exactly.
There's nothing to do with that. So
Well-
what's the issue with that?
It does, because if in fact,
Because it's an existing nonconformity. They have.
Yeah, they're
and you-
making it
and if
more
you're-
non-conforming.
If you're making that
Not making any of the 3 existing structures more non-conforming.
Correct. We're not touching any of those structures.
They're extending, they're intensifying the nonconformity, is what they're doing. So there is an issue with that. I am not allowed to do that. The law does not allow me to do that as of right.
I think
They
there's a
have
way
to
to
come to
deal
the
with
board.
this.
Yeah, one board member, would be more comfortable if you removed one of those 3 buildings.
Well, there's a lot of things they can do.
I think there's some room here. As one mayor, I'm not trying to say to remove anything. I'm saying that let's bring the 3 to a point that makes some sense. And then if you need to add the accessory to the existing building, I'm open-minded to that. Open-minded, depending upon that
I even
criteria.
wrote on my denial letter that I was not closed-minded to one of the existing ones become an ADU.
Right, but that's not, it doesn't make sense, because, just from a practical perspective, because all 3 of those structures are in the flood zone, they've created structures that are outside of the flood zone on purpose.
I mean, the existing house.
The existing house and the garage and what was proposed as the ADU, they're outside the flood zone.
Right.
So we don't want to have to, raise one of these out structures, rebuild it, go back through we don't have to do that.
Well, if you just add heat to it and you do some other minor work, which is below 50%, you don't have to raise it.
Oh, no, it's made with, it has a roof that, they're
Why don't you just take one down?
sheds.
They shouldn't have to. Accessory apartments are by right. They're by right.
They're not
I'm not
built
saying that they have to
be
take one down.
insulated.
What I am saying is, I am not allowed to make this by right because of the existing nonconformity. So I don't see how this board can say, David, you have to do something that's against the law.
I don't think it's against the law. There's tension
It's against the town
between,
by- It's against the bylaws. This bylaw, or you have 4 dwelling units and you want to have 5. So that, to me, it's not allowable by me.
we want to have an accessory apartment.
He has a leg to stand on, without a doubt, in my opinion. But I also say there's a way to clean it up. Better than just, There's a way to clean it up.
I talked to the attorney today, and I talked to her consultant as well. There are more than one way to clean this up.
yes. And I just think that instead of, as one member, I clearly see what David is saying. I, as one member, am in favor of continuing what David's saying, but I also believe that there's a way to clean it up, to fix the whole thing, hopefully in everyone's best interest. It may not be 100%, but it's a heck of a lot better than where we stand today. That's all I'm saying. I just don't believe, as one member, I can sit there and say, David, I disagree with your concept. I totally agree with where David's coming
I
from.
mean, there is, even in this neighborhood, this is not the only place that has this non-conforming.
Well, I'm gonna listen to the audience in a minute, but I'm just telling you that,
There's a neighbor who has up to 11 of
yeah,
these.
well, I get it. I mean,
You're gonna give them 3 or 4 more, you know? It's-
I understand where you're coming from. I understand both, where everybody's coming from here, but I think there's a way to clean it up. I just don't think that for me to say, I don't agree with David, I can't do that, for me. So, why don't we do it? Anyone else in the board?
I agree with you. I can't disagree with David on this one.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm curious, do they have bathrooms in these units?
Yeah, they have bathrooms.
Everything's
Summer.
dwelling
They're
in.
turned off in the winter.
So they got winterized in the wintertime and, okay.
Well, they have bathrooms and they're all hooked up to the.
What you gotta understand, there's a lot of Mashpee that are not, that yours are rentals, but there are a lot of rentals in Mashpee that are turned off, the system's bled in the winter. We've gone through that for years in Mashpee.
Yep.
And I understand that you're not saying they're rentals, I get it, but that's happened in Mashpee for years.
Why-
I
why
mean,
don't-
most of New Seabury was that way 150 years ago.
One thing we should put on the record, though, is there's the Conservation Commission has reviewed this, and we have notation from the Conservation Commission. So wherever we go, we're still gonna have to go through the process.
I mean, I have to read into the record.
Conservation's
If
already
it comes
approved
back,
this.
if it comes back to this board, yes, they'd have to go through the process, go through Mary Ann and, do that stuff. But what they did come and propose, and I think it was the right way to do it, and it's totally correct, is that their buildings are set. The contents of the ADU was not approved by this board because it wasn't presented to this board.
Yep.
So the buildings are all set, and that's the way, I think it was the right way to do this.
Well, I mean,
This is the only hanging point. It would have, if this was proposed and for the approval from this board for the ADU, the garage probably wouldn't be where it is. Probably wouldn't be allowed.
Well, because we would have turned to you, you would have spoken up, and then we would have had
Said,
a
yeah,
problem.
you're making a.
Well, again, we don't, the ADU was shown on the plans that this board had when they approved it, but again, the reason, you don't,
But correct me if I'm wrong, the approval did not approve the ADU.
right, because it doesn't, you don't need the ZBA to approve
I
it, it's by
understand, but
right.
I think we're clear on that. I think
Yes,
we made
you-
that statement.
The condition left it in the hands of David.
Exactly. Well, so, my point is, we didn't lead you on saying, oh, ADU is fine. We said, hey, that's up to David.
It wasn't
And
brought to
David-
the board specifically
Yeah.
and on purpose.
Yeah,
And I
so-
think it was the right
I
thing to do.
shared that.
I think the procedure worked, maybe not in your favor, but it worked in that we felt we could have approved. David denied something, and it has to come back to us, it looks like. All that I'm saying is, I think there's a way to get here. That's all my
They
opinion.
need a different approach,
And
exactly.
it may not be 100% for you, but it's gonna be, I think, hopefully it'd be okay, but that's up to you. I mean, I can't make that decision for you.
I think the question is, how do you get there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the conversation has
There's many
to
ways.
continue with the building
Well, I think
commission?
that's, if
There's
the
several
applicant, we
ways.
need to take a vote tonight, and if the vote is along with what David has already stated, we agree with the zoning enforcement officer, then that decision's up to them. I guess what we're saying is, we're open-minded to trying to work through this thing. That's all we're saying, I think, right? We're trying to work through this.
Isn't the issue whether we force the applicant to sue and go to court in order to get what the applicant wants?
Well, presumably, they will get what the applicant wants.
Understood.
And I mean,
that is
then
what-
then we, as far as I'm concerned, would be far less willing to have an open mind and have a discussion in reference to this.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here and
One
I'm
avenue.
I'm listening to both sides saying we want to be able to do this, we think we can
All right,
do
wait,
it,
wait.
but it's not getting done.
I
Why
wonder
don't
if
we do
the,
this? I'd like to go out, let me just go out to the audience for a second. Anyone in the audience like to speak? I think it's important we listen to anyone in the audience. Okay. Why don't we then, if no one wants to speak in the audience, then continue then.
can I ask the board if the board would entertain a continuance to its next meeting? Only because if you vote to deny it today, there's obviously a rush that my clients will probably undertake an appeal. If we think that there's a path differently forward, why don't we give the parties the opportunity to do that?
I think that's a great idea.
Exactly.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm available with a phone call. I can't tell you what this board's gonna say yea or nay to. I can tell you what I would be interested in having a conversation about. So if you wanna get me involved, I have no problem doing that.
But we're still coming back here as an appeal.
No, not necessarily.
No,
Not
because if
necessarily.
they agree to the outcome, then they would remove the appeal and just do whatever we've agreed.
Right, so say my client said, and we agreed and said, okay, it's gotta be a written finding and a special permit, then we would simply just file for that and go from there, because otherwise,
What do you do with this? How do you close
well, you'd
this one?
withdraw it once this was done. Because otherwise, we've gotta, otherwise, the likelihood is this is gonna get appealed, and we're wasting everybody's resources where there may be a path to avoid that.
I'm totally in favor of that. I think that makes total sense. It makes good sense as far as I'm concerned. David, you look frustrated, though. Tell me what you, I mean, it would seem to me, if everybody gets together and we plot a strategy that works for everybody.
We already did, you know, I thought we already did get together, so.
And it
You didn't
wasn't,
solve the problem.
and they didn't solve
Well,
the
but if
problem.
he's saying that you're gonna agree to the special permit, if, let's say that he agrees to the special
We
permit,
have plenty of options.
well, so if they agree to the special permit, let's just say they agree to what your philosophy is, which is the special permit, and giving up whatever it might be, at that point where they're saying, correct me if we're wrong, is they will say, we're gonna forget the appeal, and we're gonna file for what you asked us to file for.
Right, that would be potentially the avenue, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, potentially, I'm not saying
Right.
we're agreeing on that.
Right,
but-
because, as I said, David and I there are probably 5 different possibilities of how you.
Because
can
if we
move forward.
if we agree with you tonight as a board, then I guess the only shot they have is to appeal it to court.
Right. And then probably gets remanded back to this board.
And then we're just gonna go through all this and spend all legal time and whatever. So if we can circumvent,
If we
can,
can,
then that's great.
right, because if we can't find a path, then the board can obviously put it before.
Then
Yeah,
next
I mean,
meeting, you
I'm all
said,
for it.
For
I'm
the
all for that.
record,
Yeah.
we've done asbestos abatement in the home my parents are living in, and they're in the process of moving out right now into temporary housing, so this disruption is significant hardship.
no, we totally understand, but you heard from the board, one member. So, all right, so at this point, you're asking for a one-meeting extension.
Yeah, so I think it's October 11th or 12th.
Okay, and you'd
Ninth.
you'd have to sign a document, right, Chris, in reference to that?
I will if the board, I don't know, it's a little bit of a different process than your special permit, but if,
I'm okay with it. So at this point in time, the applicant is asking for an extension until? October 9th.
So moved.
And so, all right, so we have a motion to accept the applicant's attorney's request for an extension till October 9th, 2024. I have a motion, I have
Second.
I have a second?
Yeah, second.
All those in favor? Aye. All
thank
right.
you. Have a
So we'll
great
see you
night.
then, and hopefully, like I said, I'm available if you want me to get involved,
Yep,
fine.
I
If not,
appreciate
that's
that.
fine too.
Thank you, everybody, have a good night.
Yep.
All right.
me too.
Okay. Chris, as I said, you might want to stick around. Chris, you want to stick around for a second? I wanted to talk to you about something on other. Just want to say something to the board, real quick, before he leaves. So, sometimes what happens with me as a chair, okay, and I want everybody to be aware of this on this board, have an attorney call me or give me a call, and they will give me their side of a story. And many times they'll send me, like this happened with Chris in reference to, he will send me, case law, which I review. He'll take, Chris has an opinion in reference to raise and replace. He is of the opinion that raise and replace has its own set of criteria. It is not as a town special permit. It is the criteria that's outlined in the actual raise and replace bylaw. I disagree. And in that case, he sent me case law. I think it was in Walpole or Norfolk. Okay. So he sent it to me. I read it, called him back, said I disagree. That's simple. But what happens, though, is when he comes in front of this board, I may take a hard line on something, and this board isn't aware of what just took place, of me reviewing all the case law that he had given me. So I want the board to understand, a lot of times, attorneys will call me, not for an opinion, but they will say, I've got a case that stands behind, that gives me the following rights, in my opinion, and I will say, well, give it to me. That way, I can't review a case law tonight. It takes me hours.
Sure.
Right? I mean, case law can be 30 pages. And so I have to have it to review it, to read it, to think about it. And so he may walk in at the next meeting, at which point I say, I disagree, and I'm not in favor of what you're doing, and I disagree with how you're doing it. So you need to understand that some of that stuff takes place. And so sometimes I take a hard line on something, whether pro or con, and there could be a lot more to it than a simple pro and con, yes or no. You need to understand that. So, and it could be also from an engineering standpoint. An engineer could call me up and say, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna say, I don't agree, I don't think your calculations are correct, I don't think you're using the right criteria, I don't think you're using the right porosity, I don't think you're doing this. And then all of a sudden he comes in and I beat the heck out of him because simply I don't agree with what he's coming up with in the way he's doing it. So I just want you to know that,
Should we be aware of the fact that there's a disagreement as to what the law is? Because that's what you're getting down to. Not necessarily, going to know what the law says. But should we be aware that, look, Chris has this position as far as the law, I've looked at it, and I don't agree with that position, but this is part of the issue, that there's
sometimes
a
when I try to
disagreement.
do that, Charlie, is at the end of the meetings, like right now, but sometimes we make motions and I'm out of here and I don't have a chance
understand,
to.
yeah.
I could almost, every single meeting, I could probably talk for 20, 30 minutes about what I had for a conversation about something, somewhere, somehow. And so I thought it was important for you tonight, when Chris, I know, was on the last thing, I said, stick around for a couple minutes. Chris specifically on raise and replace has an opinion. I disagree with him, but that's part of life. I mean, right? I mean, you know Charlie's rules. Judges rely on case law, right? That's 90% of it. Well, he presented some case law to me. I don't think it's on point. I think there's some differences.
But as you pointed out to us, you're just one member of the board.
Oh, I
So
can't
give
make a
us a
deci-
summary judgment of these things and
Oh,
let
no
us know
question.
what the hell is the avenue that we're trying to
Well, so I'm
find.
not trying to say that, because I would never say to any person, oh, this is what's gonna happen. No way. I mean, it's impossible. But what I will say to them is, I disagree, or I agree.
Right, but
I.
I don't know what the case law is that he's referencing. You may know that now because you've had a discussion.
But the problem I've got is if he at a meeting gives you the case law, you're gonna say,
No,
I presume, I gotta read
I don't
this.
know, I don't know the rules of that, but if he's got a case law, you're supposed to, you should see the whole thing, but you should be able to, or somebody, Charlie certainly, could summarize what this means, or what he thinks it means. And there's always room for interpretation over legalities.
Well, then maybe the way to do that, see, and that's why I'm having this conversation, because I don't wanna be the guy, and I haven't been making these decisions at all. I mean, the thing of it is, though, is maybe when these criteria, that I summarize the case law, but the problem is the applicant's gonna disagree with my summary, because the
Well,
applicant.
maybe not. I mean, if you have a discussion with him and he, you go down the path together, maybe there is no room for compromise, but maybe there's a counterbalance. You have a conversation,
You see
not
the
just
Yeah,
get
so
the.
I would just say two things on that. I want to make clear, I think Ron has made that clear, that those discussions are, generally speaking, they're not specific to any one particular project. So it's general, because we've had this debate about the special permit criteria and which one applies. So I followed and said, Ron, this is the case, this is, so you know where I'm coming from, this is the case that I'm relying on to make my argument that the 174-17.1 is your special permit criteria. What I may do for my next raise and replace, as part of my narrative, I may provide all the board to Mary Ann the case with that, so you can all make your own decision.
But then at that point, then I'm gonna be prepared, because I know the case.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be able to summarize to this board why I disagree with you.
I would say that generally, most raise and replaces that, we don't have to get that far on that.
No, but I can see somewhere down the road, us possibly getting that far, and you may take an appeal based on that theory. And frankly, the board should know your theory, and should know my alternate theory.
Yeah, so what I would do, the next one that I have,
Yeah, it's never a specific case.
right, exactly.
So it's not me saying, oh, yeah, no, I agree with you. It's about overall theory.
Yep.
How the board's reviewing it. So, that's probably what I'll do. My next narrative, I can provide that case as part of the narrative.
Should we be
I think that'll
involved
help,
as a
Chris,
board
yeah.
in making legal determinations, or is our job as a board to be making factual determinations based upon the zoning bylaws?
Well, I doubt very much that we're gonna be able, let's just say that
Yeah.
if we're not gonna be able to use town council on every one of these issues.
I understand, that's
So
what
we're
I get.
faced with having to deal with these things.
That's where I go.
That's the problem,
Yeah.
because, and it takes, as you know, Charlie, better than I do, it takes a lot of research and study to find out, when he hands you a 20-page document, right, and it's theory, and you sit there and you gotta go back, and sometimes it refers to another case, and it's a lot of time and effort, and, it's us. I
Yeah.
don't see town council I don't see us reaching out to town council whenever asked these
I
decisions.
don't think we should. No,
And I don't think I'd get an approval from the town itself to interact with town council.
Well, this is kind of the first one of like this varietal that's come up
yeah.
since I've been here. I've been here a bunch of meetings now. And you've been great on coming in. You've been ready, prepared, and all that kind of stuff. Had to take it on the chin a couple times and seems ready to work with the board. And so if we can continue to work in that spirit, I think it's a good idea. And if you have to sit down and read 20-page reports, well, you are the chairman.
Well, yeah, and I'm okay with it. No, I'm okay with it. And I didn't want the board to ever think, because I would never give him or anyone an opinion from a board standpoint. That ain't happening ever, I can tell you that. But I will give an opinion to him as to whether I agree with his theory.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, just because other board members might agree with this theory.
and we value your opinion as to whether you do or you don't agree with it. Because
so-
it's important for us to
Just
know.
open book, that's all I'm trying to be here.
No, that's fine.
All I'm trying to do, open book, and take about 10, 15 minutes to let you know what goes on behind the scenes, and it's above board stuff, it's no deal shake or anything, it's just people asking for an opinion, and I'm just one person.
I
Fine
think
by me.
the legal aspect of it does not come up all that much for us to make the determination
Right.
as tonight.
It doesn't.
So in the instances where it might, I think it's good for us as members of the board to have some indication of the difference of opinion as to the law, whatever that is.
The reason why this specific item is, he came in for a raise and replace. We started talking about various aspects of a special permit that I had in my hand, the special permit criteria, and he, after a meeting or during, whatever, said, during a meeting, he said, you don't have a right to look at that. The raise and replace bylaw has its own criteria, it's not a special permit criteria. Well, I disagree, and so that's why he called me up, sent me this information, and said, I disagree, and here's case law. And that's why it started.
Yeah, I got no problem with that. That's.
All right.
Well,
Thank you
law notwithstanding, it doesn't seem like they're asking for much, to be honest with you. It
Well,
doesn't
we
seem
can't-
like- I know
I
we can't go around the law, but it just doesn't seem like there's a big ask here.
Now, let them work that out between
Okay,
David.
yes. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes of September 11th.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, the additional topics I just covered.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, adjourned.
Aye, aye. There it is, I like it.